Well, Monday night brings us a game that, quite frankly, looks like a mismatch. Pittsburgh Steelers hosting the Kansas City Chiefs. Pittsburgh is currently installed as an 11.5-point favorite in this game on BETDAQ. 42 is the total. Steelers have won 3 straight. They now sit at 5-3, second place in the AFC North. And the Chiefs just might be the worst team in the entire NFL. It's either the Chiefs or the Jaguars. There's no question about that. And really compelling cases could be made for each team. I'll make the case for Kansas City real quick. They're 1-7 on the year, 2-6 against the spread. Most disturbing. Get this. I mean, it sounds unbelievable, but it's true. Kansas City has not held the lead for a single second in any game this season in regulation. The only game they won, they're 1-7. They beat the New Orleans Saints on the road in overtime, and they never led in that game until the kick went through the uprights in overtime, and obviously the game was over at that point. So the Chiefs, through 8 games, have not had a lead. Not for 1 second in any game. It's incredible. No team since 1929 has played 8 games and has not held a lead. So that in itself could be enough to qualify them as the worst team in the NFL, but it goes beyond that. They've turned the ball over 29 times. That is 10 more turnovers than any other team in the league. They are 29th in the NFL in points allowed and 30th in points scored. They allow 30 points a game. They only score 16.6 points a game. Their quarterback, Matt Castle, these numbers probably won't surprise you because I just told you they'd turned it over 29 times this year. But Matt Castle, 11 interceptions. He's lost 7 fumbles already this year. He will be going in this game because Brady Quinn's still a little fuzzy with that concussion that he sustained a couple of weeks ago. So, I mean, you look at the Chiefs, there's absolutely no bright spots. Romeo Crennel tried to shake things up a little bit this week, fired himself as defensive coordinator. Keep in mind, Crennel, who has been the defensive coordinator in Kansas City for the last couple of years, was given the head coaching job at the end of last season and retained that job heading into this season. But he was also the defensive coordinator this year. He was both head coach and defensive coordinator. Well, he's recused himself from that position and named Gary Gibbs, promoted Gary Gibbs to defensive coordinator. Not sure how much that'll change. I'm sure it'll be basically the same scheme, I guess. A new guy calling the plays. I think Crennel's just grasping for straws at this point. This feels like a desperation move, and why not? It's time for desperation. That defense we mentioned, 29th in the NFL in points allowed. They're averaging 8.9 yards per pass attempt. Not 8.9 yards per completion, 8.9 yards per pass attempt. That is far and away worse than the NFL. And bad news, the Pittsburgh Steelers, that is the strength of their offense. Ben Roethlisberger and those wide receivers. Even though Antonio Brown is doubtful for this game, so look for Emmanuel Sanders to play a bigger role. Obviously, Mike Wallace, their number 1 wide receiver, but Roethlisberger, an elite quarterback. You expect him to shred this Kansas City secondary. Again, they're averaging 9 yards per attempt. The Steelers, number 1 in the league in total defense, yards allowed, number 1 in pass defense, number 4 in rush defense. So their defense is dominant as ever. Had a couple of subpar performances early in the year against the Oakland Raiders and against the Tennessee Titans. But since then, the last 3 weeks, they've really tightened things up. Steelers looking like a good team here. I lean towards the Steelers here. It's hard not to, right? I mean, I know 11.5 is a big number. Tough to cover a double-digit spread in the NFL, no doubt. But I don't see any hope for the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, aside from 2 games this season, the Chiefs have played 8 games, 7 losses. And there have been 2 games this season, the only 2 games they've covered the spread where they've shown any spark. Their 1 win against New Orleans, and they were down 21-9 late in the 3rd quarter of that game, and ended up winning that game, a total collapse by the Saints, and a 9-6 loss to Baltimore. So their second most impressive performance of the year by far was a loss in which they only scored 6 points. Every other game, aside from those games, Kansas City has lost by 18, 28, 18, 21 points. I mean, they just get blown out all the time, so I don't see much problem here. Back in the favorite Pittsburgh here and laying the points. You obviously worry about it. You know, strange things could happen. I mean, we saw Kansas City already win a game as a big road underdog this year against the New Orleans Saints. You can tell I'm trying. I'm trying to make some sort of argument for the Chiefs here, but it's hard. It's hard. I do lean towards Pittsburgh in this game. I would be stunned, absolutely stunned, if the Steelers lost this game. I think there's almost no chance of that happening. And I think there's a very high likelihood that they'll cover the 11.5.